This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. All right, folks, Big Paul here today with another Anabolic Q&A. I've got some good questions for you today. We're going to talk about recovering from surgery and what phase you should go to after recovering from surgery, cycle lengths, how long you should run a cycle. We're going to talk about sleep and many other things. We're going to dig into all your questions in just 1 second. All right, before we start, I want to tell you quickly about the Science of Anabolics and PEDs e-course. It is up and active today at the Anabolic Bodybuilding website. You can go find it with the link below. There's over 2 hours worth of content for free you can check out before you even think about buying. Go check it out. It's the most comprehensive course out there, science-based on anabolics and PEDs. All right, first question we have here is from S225. You've talked about only sleeping 5 hours per night while in some of your past videos. What did you do to fix your sleep? Well, I wish I could say my sleep was a lot better. It has improved a bit. I still don't get the best sleep. There are some things that I have changed. One of the big things is I've tried to limit my caffeine consumption. I'll have a little bit of coffee in the morning to get me started during the day, but I have stopped using pre-workouts. I very rarely use a pre-workout unless I need just an extra kick in the pants after a long day. I don't want the extra stimulation from the pre-workout. I work out late in the evening, and if I use a pre-workout, I find that my sleep suffers as a result. Another thing that I've done to help with my sleep is using a CPAP. I was getting up multiple times a night to pee, and I thought maybe the problem was bladder or prostate related. But then when I started using the CPAP, I think what was happening is my sleep was getting disrupted. And I didn't really have to pee. I was just being woken up from choking, basically being starved of oxygen. My body would wake up and I would go to the bathroom and pee. When I started using the CPAP, I noticed that I didn't have to get up at night a lot to pee, maybe one time. Being careful with how much water I drink towards the end of the day. That also helps. Supplementing with some potassium and magnesium at night also helps. Magnesium will help you sleep as well. Magnesium and potassium are also electrolytes, will help you not flush out water at night as well. A lot of times you'll find when you eat a lot of sodium and drink water late, you'll pee throughout the night. So little things like that have helped as well. Sometimes if I really struggle with sleeping, I'll use CBN gummies. CBN is, I think it's a THC analog. Don't quote me on that, but you can find it if you have legalized marijuana in your state. You can find CBN sleep gummies. I use this brand called Snooze. No affiliation with them, but I picked those up and I use those at night to help me sleep. They work very well. Melatonin can also help a bit to put you to sleep if you have trouble falling to sleep. Me, I usually wake up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep, but I found that was probably my sleep apnea that was causing that problem. Next question is from Justin Perry. I'm recovering from hernia surgery, laparoscopic, and lost some muscle and gained fat. He said, now I'm kind of skinny fat. Should I do a light bulk to bring back the muscle that was lost before I cut, or what do you think? My fear is that cutting now with already lost muscle would make things worse. When you're recovering from surgery, probably not a good idea to be in a calorie deficit. You don't want to be depleted. I'm not saying that you should be in a surplus, but at a bare minimum, it should be isocaloric. I would also say recovering from surgery, if you're in a recovery phase, you have to be careful with eating a ton of carbs as well because they can be inflammatory. Once you're past the recovery phase, before you start bulking again, once the injury is healed and you're cleared to work out, I would get lean first. That would be my 2 cents. I think if you're already fat, if your body fat percentage is higher it doesn't make sense to bulk when your body fat is already higher. You're just going to get even fatter. You want to avoid being in a caloric surplus when your body fat is already high, because the fatter you get, the harder it's going to be to cut down when it's time to cut down. If, let's say, if you're already between 15 and 20%, what are you going to bulk up to? 25 to 30%? And then if you want to get lean, you're going to have to cut down to 10. That is a huge amount of weight to lose, and you're likely going to lose some muscle if you have to cut down that far. I don't like to let my body fat get much above 15%. I would say that's sort of the maximum. And I would suggest that for my clients as well, 15%. You want to be able to see the outline of your abs. If you've gotten past that, if you can't see your abs anymore, then you're probably too fat to be bulking. Minotaur55 says that some coaches believe that fats help with pumps and fullness in workouts. What are your thoughts? Well, let's think about this logically. How would fats contribute to pumps and fullness? I don't think there's anything that fats really do, or much of anything that fats do, that would contribute to pumps and fullness in the gym. Pumps and fullness in the gym are purely blood volume being pushed into the muscle. Also, hydration. The muscle is 80% water. Filling the muscle up with glycogen. Filling the muscle up with water. For every gram of carbohydrates, glucose that you force into the muscle as stored glycogen will pull in 3 to 4 grams of water. So you have to consider that. Something like 80% of the actual, 75 to 80% of the actual muscle tissue is just fluids. The other stuff, the glycogen, fluids, etc. And only about 2 to 3% of the muscle volume, something like that, is intramuscular triglycerides. Or I always get those two mixed up, intra. But you get what I'm saying. So only 2 to 3, 4, 5%, up to 5% is actually stored triglycerides in the muscle. So you tell me how that's going to contribute to fullness. Fats have nothing to do with hydration. Fats have nothing to do with pulling glycogen into the muscle. So if you want a pump in your workout, make sure you're well hydrated. Make sure you have electrolytes in place, such as sodium, which is going to increase blood volume, potassium, which will help pull fluids into the cell through the sodium-potassium pump. And you're going to have more blood volume. You're going to have more fluid volume in the muscle. Make sure you're well hydrated. Things like insulin and extra carbs before a workout are going to help with fullness and pump. Fats really have nothing to do with it. I don't know why somebody would say that. They probably haven't thought through how the body works and handles these nutrients, and there's just really not much that fats are going to contribute to a pump. Illicit Pumps ask, how long should a typical off-season hypertrophy cycle phase be? I am of the belief, and what I've seen is somewhere in the 16 to 20 week range. Anything less than that, depending on what compounds you're running, is not enough time to let things cement in. Like, I'll hear guys tell me that they're running something like equipoise for 8 weeks. It's going to take up to 8 weeks for equipoise to even peak. Why would you run it for 8 weeks? I don't remember how long satellite cell proliferation takes, something like 90 days. Don't quote me on that one. I've seen it over and over again with myself and with my clients. Somewhere in that 16 to 20 weeks, maybe up to 24, is about the max you can push a phase before it becomes counterproductive, whether that is a cut or whether that is an off season. Both. You'll hit a sticking point where you just can't progress any further. You'll start to feel tired. You'll start to feel worn down. You'll notice that the drugs don't seem to perform as well. When you hit that wall, that's when it's time to pull back, go into a maintenance phase, and just sort of take a break, let your body recover, and then shift into your next phase. I have pushed off seasons longer, and typically what happens once I get past that period of time, it doesn't seem like the drugs work as well. It doesn't seem like body composition holds up. You just start to get fatter. You're not really gaining any muscle, and then you need to shift into a cut. And it's the same thing with cutting. About 20 weeks is the maximum that you can push a cut. 16 ideally. Anything more than that, you're probably going to need a diet break to let your metabolism recover a bit, Give yourself a mental break. Let your body wash off some fatigue, and then you can start up and do another cut again. So if you have a lot of weight to lose, you probably want to take a little bit longer. But permabulkers, I'm sorry to break the news to you, much longer than 20 weeks, you're not getting much out of it. All right, next question from Vil Maestro. I think I'm saying that correct. This sort of ties into the last question. How long should a diet break be? I've finished a 12-week cut phase, and I've lost 12 kilograms. Congratulations on that. That's, 25 pounds or so. I used your carb cycling method. Thank you for your content. It helps keep me disciplined. My goal is to see my abs for the first time in my life and then get huge. You could probably push the diet phase for a little longer than 12 weeks if you're feeling good and you're still losing weight. You'll know when you've hit the wall with a diet phase. You'll start to accumulate fatigue. You'll notice that the weight loss slows down. There's only so far down you can pull the calories. There's only so much cardio you can do. Somewhere in that 16 to 20 week mark is what I've said before, is about where the diet phase wears out. So that's usually when I stop, is somewhere in that range. I've found that 4 to 6 weeks of a diet break, probably more like 6 weeks, is adequate. Usually what I'll do is pull the cardio way down. I'll pull the cardio down by half or more. Sometimes I will scale back fat burners or completely come off of them. I will push the food back up to maintenance and then start trying to slowly push up the calories a little bit without any weight gain and see what we can get away with. And a lot of times I found if you just keep adding in a little bit of carbs weekly over that time period, the diet break, that you can actually push your calories up a fair amount without additional weight gain is what I've seen. It seems like there is some sort of metabolic upregulation when you start adding carbs back in. I've not found the same to be true with fats. Now, you do need some fats, need some EFAs, but usually when you start upping the fats and the carbs at the same time, I find that people just start getting fat. So you sort of have to pick your poison there. I prefer to just up the carbohydrates. And that break, 4 to 6 weeks, then you should be feeling good. Your fatigue should be washed off, and you should be ready to go for another diet phase. Shrexy Boy 1850 asks, how do you tell if you are a better responder to higher fats or higher carbohydrates? Well, there isn't a better responder to higher fats or higher carbohydrates in my experience. There is an appropriate amount of fats. There is an appropriate amount of carbohydrates that you need to eat in a balanced diet for bodybuilding or for health. For bodybuilding, we are going to push carbs up a little bit more if you want to grow. What I've seen is the guys that run the high fat, low carbohydrate diets never seem to get that big. Just my experience. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's really difficult. And if you think about what fats contribute to muscle building, and I mentioned it earlier in the recording here that fats only make up something like 3 to 5% of the entire structure of a muscle. Most of it's just water and carbohydrates more than anything. Something like 20 to 25%, 30%. I don't remember the exact numbers, protein structures. And then the rest is just water and glycogen for the most part. So the majority of the muscle is fluids, and fats aren't going to contribute to that. Now, you do need a certain amount of EFAs for cellular repair, for vitamin and nutrient uptake. You do need EFAs. Saturated fats are essentially just fuel for your body to use. So if you're not eating carbs, you're going to need more saturated fats, probably for fuel. If you're eating plenty of carbs, so you don't need saturated fats. In my experience, that people are going to grow better from eating more carbohydrates, keeping saturated fats low, have a moderate amount of EFAs, an appropriate amount, and moderate to higher proteins. That's what I've seen that people grow the best on. All right, the next question is from Eric Makas 4290. Eric asks, I'm curious your thoughts on a PPL workout and whether an intermediate lifter should program so the PPL repeats a 3-day split and maybe change the order of the exercise, or do an A, B each day with varying exercise choices. I tend to do an A, B. I don't switch exercises out a lot. I find the exercises that work for me and I stick with those exercises, but I do an A-B workout, and that sort of goes back to my DC training days. Dante would have you do actually an A-B-C workout where you would have 3 different exercise choices. You would work through progressing each exercise, and then once you max that out, you would sub it out for a new one. I find it to be more productive just to sort of stick to the same exercises, the ones that you find that you get the maximum stimulus to fatigue ratio out of, the ones that don't bother your joints and make your connective tissue scream, the ones that you can continue to progress and get more out of. And once you have exhausted that exercise, then maybe you retire it for a bit and add in a different one. So for example, if you're doing some sort of machine press and you've maxed out the weight on that machine and you can't go any further and you're doing a progressive overload style training, you want to add in a new exercise and then master that one. And then maybe you come back to that one later and change the rep scheme or something like that. That's typically how I structure my workouts, but I tend to stick to the same exercises over and over. You'll notice that most top pro bodybuilders, you'll see these guys have done the same workout with the same exercise selection for years and years and years and years on end. They don't change that frequently. It's just what I've seen. Guys that bounce around and constantly are changing exercises are your gym bros, not the guys that have reached the pinnacle of physique enhancement. JRNYC8868 asked, does EQ inhibit aromatase similarly to DHT derivatives? I have heard that EQ itself aromatizes to estrogen rather than E2. What are the practical effects of EQ on your testosterone metabolites? Yes, it does seem that EQ, it aromatizes at a lower rate than testosterone does. And from what I understand, I believe it's mostly to estrogen. I think that is correct. I would have to confirm that. I don't recall off the top of my head, but that's what I remember it being. It's not a DHT derivative, so DHT derivatives don't aromatize at all. So it's not a DHT derivative, so that is incorrect. But it aromatizes at a very much lower rate than testosterone. And with that said, anything that is going to aromatize at a lower rate than testosterone could potentially occupy some of that aromatase enzyme and lower the aromatization rate of the testosterone. At least that's how I understand the mechanisms of how it works. I could be completely wrong about that, but I have seen it on blood panels when I look at blood panels that when people add EQ in, that their estradiol seems to be lower. And that would make sense given that how EQ aromatizes at a lower rate and that it's probably occupying some of that aromatase that would otherwise be converting testosterone into estrogen. Soapy Fern, he has an important question here. We're talking about cheat meals. What's your favorite pizza, Paul? I'm a meat lovers kind of guy. I want sausage, pepperoni, ham, every piece of meat that I can possibly get on a pizza. I don't like vegetables on my pizza. I don't like pineapple on my pizza. I just want a bunch of greasy ass, salty, cured meats on my pizza, as many as I possibly can get. I really don't eat pizza that often. I think I've had it. I had some when we were at the Arnold Classic. I had a nighttime craving. I've been walking around all day long. I hadn't eaten enough. And we were at the house and I ordered a couple pizzas for all of us. And I ate a meat pizza. I think that was the first time I've had pizza in probably a year, somewhere around that. But when I do eat pizza, I am going to have meat on my pizza. I used to be a big pizza eater when I was younger. I don't really crave it that much anymore. I don't know why. It's just so salty. I don't tolerate gluten well anymore. I don't tolerate dairy well anymore. And so when I eat it, I just feel miserable the next day. My digestion is all fucked up. So for me, it's just not worth eating. Maybe I'll have a piece or two, but I do like pizza. It just doesn't like me anymore. So if I am going to cheat, I usually stick with stuff that's probably things like Greek or Mediterranean food. I like Asian food, sushi, Thai, things like that for my cheat meals. That's generally what I eat. I'll have kebabs. I like kebabs. That's another thing that I like to do for my cheat meals, but not a lot of pizza in my diet. Pizza really for bodybuilding purposes. I like to eat cheat meals that are still somewhat productive for bodybuilding purposes, where I am still having protein and carbs that are fairly quality carbs, but I'm just getting a bit more fat than I would normally eat. That's generally how I keep my cheat meals. I don't like things that are a lot of processed foods or have a lot of gluten and dairy, things that are going to impact my digestion. Because what a lot of times will happen is if I have those types of meals, then I can't eat the next day. So I end up actually eating less as a result of having that cheat meal with foods that I don't tolerate well. Jim Bro Chad asks, do you cycle caffeine pre-workout powder? How long on and off? I talked about that earlier in my sleep thing. I don't like having a lot of caffeine in the off season. It really affects my sleep. I'm very sensitive to caffeine. Some people aren't. I'll have a cup of coffee in the morning, maybe 2 cups of coffee in the morning, but I try to limit my caffeine to just the morning. I really do not like pre-workouts. I don't like to be overstimulated during my workout. If I need a pump, I'll just drink some extra fluids, take some insulin, have some electrolytes, eat a bunch of carbs, and that's plenty to get a pump during the workout. I don't need caffeine for that. I'm not one of these caffeine junkies that needs a ton of caffeine to work out. Just not my thing. If you can tolerate it well, that's fine, but I would measure my caffeine consumption, my tolerance for caffeine consumption based on whether or not it affects my sleep. So if you're a person that it negatively affects your sleep, then it's probably not worth having a pre-workout. When cutting, is it better to eat your carbs before or after your workout? There really is not much of a difference. I mean, there is some GLUT4 transport that occurs during and after the workout. So in theory, it would make more sense to stack your carbs intra and post-workout because of GLUT4 transport stimulation. But ultimately, at the end of the day, losing fat is about net energy balance. When you're really depleted in dieting, you're going to be glycogen depleted anyway. So any carbs that you eat during a cutting phase are likely going to be utilized efficiently. So where you put them doesn't matter as much during a cut as it probably does during the off season, I would think. Just speculation. This is just my theory. I don't have any scientific basis for it, but in the off season, I would think it probably makes more sense to stack your carbs intra and post workout rather than piling up pre, unless you're taking insulin. Insulin is going to force the issue. So that is a completely different scenario, but I don't overthink it. I do put my carbs primarily around my workout. When I am cutting, I will have my other meals be a lot of times carb free. And then I will stack my carbs around my workout just so I maximize my performance during my workout. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you on this one today. Please let me know if you have any thoughts or observations based off of my Q&A today. Put them in the comment section below. Go check out that Anabolics e-course. I promise you it's fantastic. Thank you for your support. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.